Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the Tea. Tea Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness based podcast. It is not intended to be a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. So here we are. I know that it's Tuesday in Georgia, so I'm sure that you are probably tracking the election, but that's not what I'm talking about today. In fact, I'm on this other social media buzz that has been over Coach Prime Sanders' decision to leave Jackson State University to take a position at Colorado. Now, people have expressed a range of emotions about his decision, and I know it is leaving people feeling, as some like to say, in their feelings. And so I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about that. So, some of you may be very familiar with Coach Sanders starting around, I think, September 2020. He took a position at Jackson State, and people were concerned, confused, maybe hesitant, wondering like, okay, what's going to happen with this? But also, there was some excitement about him bringing his skill set to a predominantly black institution. During his time, he earned two conference championships. He drew a lot of fire from people in that process because, he is very much a person who is known for his grand entrances, his candor about things, and particularly as we started talking about players being valued at predominantly white institutions. He had a lot of statements about the plight of students that were at predominantly black institutions. And also, just there were some questions about his allegiance to the SWAC and that he wasn't necessarily somebody that came out of the SWAC. The people were very upset about his games being covered on ESPN, and that Jackson State University wasn't a school that anybody cared about and they weren't going to watch. So there was a lot of controversy even in his coaching, much less this decision to move on to a different school. And so we're going to talk a little bit about today. I can't believe you left. Fears, frustrations, and forget me nots. So let's do a little bit of unpacking because I know that there are a lot of different opinions that people have. I'm sure you have probably seen a post in your feed on social media or on a cast, whether it was a podcast or you're watching your virtual news programming or watching if people have cable still, watching your cable news to hear something about this decision. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. Um, so some people are absolutely saying coaches move. That's what they do. They move throughout their careers. They come, they go, for better or worse, right? So they may have successful seasons in places. They may have unsuccessful seasons. They may be trying to move up in the ranks of coaching. They might try to get more experience in different areas. And so, they are just in this process of job searching, as a lot of people have recognized their worth. They have these opportunities, and so they're looking for certain things. They take these opportunities, right? So these folks are what I call the unbothered. In fact, I saw a meme today, and it said Mark safe from worrying about where Deion Sanders works, right? So some people are just not concerned about that at all. There are those people that are appreciative of the exposure that was received at Jackson State during Deion Sanders' tenure there. He has increased enrollment at HBCUs for talented athletes who may not have previously considered HBCUs. He created an online viewership in that ESPN, even though people were commenting that it was ESPN3, nonetheless, a viewership of over 200,000 watching games that he played in. He set records of attendance. I think one was over 42,000 people attended a game where he was playing, where his team that he was coaching was playing. He created a documentary that highlighted student athlete experiences. He brought some attention to the water crisis that happened in Jackson, Mississippi. He talked about disparities in funding and resources at HBCUs for student athletes. And he brought some endorsements and much needed upgrades to facilities and equipment for students at JSU. So some people are like, hey, we thank you for what you did. So we're better off having had you than we were before you came. Then there are some people who are understanding, but they may still just be a little disappointed about how it turned out, right? So they recognize that coaching jobs for African Americans can be difficult to come by. They don't feel like one person should have to carry the weight of considering what everyone else needs when they're just trying to do the best by themselves and their families. They understand that this type of pressure can be very damaging and unfair and can be a burden to someone making a decision. And we've known, as we think about, some people have completed suicide because they felt like they couldn't really have an option that didn't allow them to disappoint people. And so it became just too much for them to carry. We recognize that he might have made the best decision that he could, given all of the things that we may not even know about that were the factors that allowed him to make this decision. And they realized that no matter what, no one was going to be happy with any decision that he made. Some people were not going to want you to stay at JSU because they felt like it became more about you than it did the students. And then some people were not going to want you to leave JSU because they felt like there might have been some hurt when you did leave the students. And I do think that there were some people that were very concerned about how JSU might be now affected in the years to come. Right? But they were able to understand, even if they might have wanted a different outcome. Then there are people that are truly disappointed and hurt. They feel like he's taking with him talent, and this is going to have a negative outcome on other players or players who may have considered coming to JSU who now are not going to come because they were coming for Coach Prime and he's no longer there. They feel like they might have been pawns in a plan for him to get a desired goal, and it was never about the I love, but more so about Coach Prime. And so these people are very hurt and disappointed in his decision making. And then we have the people who are just enraged. They feel like oppression is rearing its ugly head again, that talent is often taken from HBCUs, that players are not allowed to be able to be seen as anything other than an opportunity to be exploited by predominantly white institutions, that black players and historically black colleges and universities are often thought of as inferior, black coaches are often thought of as inferior, and black players are only valued because they can run, catch, jump, throw, and then we're with no need for anyone anymore in this predominantly white institution, and they're thrown away. And they realize that Coach Prime is aware of some of these dynamics. He's experienced some of these dynamics in his life, and yet he still chose to go to a predominantly white institution, even though he spoke up about some of these disparities that black student athletes in particular experienced. And so they felt like this was really a slap in the face, given that you know all of this and you still made that choice. So where does that leave us? Well, let's kind of talk about it. So if you are in that camp that marked yourself safe from caring about whether not he stayed at JSU or went somewhere else, I encourage you to continue to engage in the awesomeness of your self-care and your boundaries. But also, there may be some strategies that we discuss in reference to some of the other feelings that people may have that may be applicable to you at other times in your life when you feel abandoned or disappointed, rejected, not valued. So let's start with the people who are appreciative. I think it is very important for us that we consider and are mindful of that we don't get pulled into arguments with people, trying to convince them that they shouldn't feel what they feel. You appreciate the complexities of the decision that Coach Sanders had to make, and you recognize that he made the decision that worked best for him, and that you don't get a chance to have a say in what somebody else does in their decision making, in the same way that you don't want people to have necessarily input in yours. You see that there are different perspectives, and everybody is allowed to have whatever their perspective is about that situation. And even if you want people to better understand your view, you recognize that it's important to make space for them to be where they are. And people will come to you if they want to see another perspective. So don't overexert yourself. Don't overextend your energy and frustrate yourself trying to prove to people why they should see this from a perspective of being appreciative. Allow them to be able to be in the space that they're in, and continue to do the things that give you meaning and purpose. Set a limit for your conversations. Don't doom scroll. Don't argue with people. Express your point, move forward. You don't have to get the last word, right? Stay in that appreciative space. For people who are understanding but may have preferred a different outcome, I encourage you to think about the things that are important to you when you make a decision. Focus on how you like to be able to make those decisions based on your boundaries and values. Think about the importance of being able to make choices, not because we're coerced to do so, not because we're fearful or we feel obligated or have been made to feel guilty, but because we can appreciate that when we get to make a decision that feels good to us, it allows us to have healthy, positive outcomes. And so recognize that in the same way you like to be supported when you're doing what is healthy for you, even if it may not be what someone else wanted, they're still able to see and respect or appreciate or value your decision, then that's the same space you want to live in for other people. So we want to be in that space of self-compassion. And for us, like, hey, I know when I've made decisions, it's, and I've not made right choices all the time, but I've tried to do the best that I could do. I tried to learn from decisions I made that weren't the best and be able to be compassionate for other people. Except that it is healthy for us to allow people to have their choices and their boundaries, whether we understand them or prefer them. They get to make that choice. And recognizing that when you accept other people's decisions, it can motivate you to do what you may have wanted to do, to allow you to be able to create these healthy changes in your own life, right? For everyone who is disappointed and hurt, there are going to be disappointments in life. And it is important for us to understand that we're not going to be able to have things the way we want all the time. And that everything people want from us, they won't be able to have every time. But we expect them to understand that they won't be able to get everything they want. Now, I do want you to allow yourself to grieve. I also want you to be able to grieve and not stay in that place of frustration and hurt and grieving. Reframe how you're looking at that situation. Look at all the potential things that may have influenced a choice or a decision that someone made and separate those facts from your feelings. I may feel like they did it intentionally to be hurtful, that they were using me in some way, that they were exploiting a situation in some way. I don't necessarily know that that's true. I may need to look at other times where I felt this way, and am I projecting times that I've been disappointed and people did have ulterior motives onto this situation? Let me think about my core beliefs and my ability to trust other people. Let me think about, hey, how do I want people to view me? And how do I want to view others when they've disappointed me? Right? Think about the times you've managed disappointments previously in your life, because sometimes we'll fall into that pattern of thinking that, like, oh, here you go, you're just like everyone else. And really, that's not the case. I have plenty of exceptions for when people weren't doing something to exploit other people. But because I didn't have control in this situation, I'm now projecting a belief onto it that isn't necessarily accurate just because I think it. So focus on the areas where you do have control and power. Set a small goal for yourself, something that you can accomplish for you, and surround yourself with people who love, care about, and support you. For those of you who are enraged, understand that there are emotions and thoughts that are fueling that rage. And that's what you really want to get to. What is it about this situation that triggered me in this way? Is it that I feel like I was discarded or that people were discarded, that they weren't valued? You're tired of it. You're frustrated with this situation. Remind yourself of your worth and value and the value of others around you. Donate to your favorite HBCU, your alma mater, or an organization that empowers African Americans. Recruit or encourage others to attend or work for predominantly Black institutions and organizations. Think about someone in terms of their choices to leave. Doesn't mean that you're undervalued and doesn't mean that it's about you, because oftentimes we will personalize things. We will put all of those factors onto someone's decision, even though it's not connected to us at all. Realize that a person is allowed to make their choices, and then you want to release them and how it is consuming you, right? Because sometimes we choose to carry things that aren't ours to carry. And we have to ask ourselves the question, why am I carrying this weight when there are other ways I can be expending my energy? So let me focus on my choices and what I want my next steps to be and goals that I have. So I'm shifting my focus. So I'm not continuing to ruminate on something that's keeping me enraged. Let me celebrate my worth. the worth that I have for others, my gratitudes. What am I thankful for? What am I thankful for in others? How can I create ways to show people that I'm thankful, that I appreciate them, that I value them, that they matter? Scholarships, awards, social media posts, investments, right? So there are just a lot of factors here, and I want people to consider. I want you to breathe, reset, accept that there are things that you will not be able to control. Be thankful that there are things that you can control, and also be thankful for the things in your life that have allowed you to have meaning and purpose. And don't forget, your worth is determined by you, not other people. So someone choosing to leave or to stay does not mean you're any more or any less worthy. Do something that makes you feel proud and purposeful. And most importantly, be well.